lights. And the camera's ready. And cue the sound in 3, 2, 1. Hello and namaste. I am the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed my Latino Outreach edition. Disculpa mi acento. Forgive my accent in that previous video. It was pretty bad. As a native-born Mexican who legally emigrated here with his family as a child because of appropriately aligned corporate connections, I have no Spanish accent when speaking English. And when speaking Spanish, I sound more like a white guy who just learned Spanish than a Mexican who's spoken Spanish his whole life. And that's something I'm not exactly proud of. But it's funny. But enough of that. Let's get serious. Let's do a little bit of discussing Trump. No, en serio. Latinos en favor de Trump. No te entiendo. Explícame, por favor. Okay? I think I sounded a bit more Cuban there than anything else, but I mean it. Like I'm reaching out to my Latino brothers and sisters who aren't spewing out the kind of spin doctor nonsense that the Latino American talking head puppet guys are spewing out. I'm like, I want to hear from real folks, real Hispanic Americans, Latino Americans, Chicano Americans, El Salvadorian Americans, whatever kind of American you are that speaks Spanish. I want to know, and you're in favor of Trump. I want to know, like, what gives? How do you not see through his? He's just utilizing our culture and like the double-edged sword that our two countries, sort of love each other, hate each other, kind of thing, to rile up the xenophobic, racist white guys that don't appreciate our contribution to the melting pot that is America. So I totally flubbed it there. But you might notice that I've decided to keep it in. And instead of editing it out and taking it to the blooper reel, which, by the way, honest, there's a lot of material there already, I thought I'd just keep it in and share and play with it. Oh, you know what it is? It's the sleeves. I hope you enjoy the bit. The sleeves are messing with me. As you can see, I was having technical difficulties with my wardrobe. Wish I had a camera person so I wouldn't have to film myself being such a fool or get up and turn the camera off and put it back on. Wish I had a music director, cause I don't know what else to sing in this song. Okay, there's one. And that I kind of start rambling about how I would cope with it if I were in a live theater situation. If this were a live theater, this would be a whole act. Just a funny bit of music and me like staring at you awkwardly while I undid my sleeves. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I used to be a clown, a professional stage clown. In fact, a silent clown with a group. Clownzilla, we were called back in the day. I'd like to resurrect that group or create a new one, but that is neither here nor there. One of the most interesting aspects of that clowning technique was the use of absurdist misdirection in behavior and action while maintaining deep soul-penetrating eye contact. So you'd do a silly thing that would just get sillier and sillier because you kept doing it and you were staring the audience down. And it could be absolutely anything. Thank you for joining me. This is the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, presenting Election Countdown 2016. With 70 some odd days left, I think we're slightly less. I think we might be 69 days away now. Election Countdown 2016. With less than 70 days left until the election, 69 I think, actually. I'm just astounded by the turn of events today, honestly. I thought I was going to come on here and mention the crossbow attacks from last week that got very little airtime on the news, and celebrate that Catherine Jane was free. She was an Australian charity worker who was taken captive 4 months ago in Afghanistan. This little delightful article, or bit of news, was only brought to my attention because it was seen on the scroller at the bottom of a major cable news network, and then we had to go verify that it had actually happened. So welcome home, Catherine Jane. I hope you're not too horribly traumatized, and I'm sending you a little bit of love and energy your way. But for those of you who didn't know, a little bit of peace and grooviness to celebrate. Someone taken hostage in Afghanistan's home in the States. But now to the crazy breaking news, because honestly, I was shocked and amazed. It's been just a whole day's worth, day and a half's worth of inexplicable shock and amazement at Donald Trump. I've been watching him daily. All right, now understand that I'm not someone who falls for the lamestream media. Trump, to me, has always seemed to be playing the part of the straw man. You know, if you've never heard that term, it's a little antiquated, but straw man is sort of like the boogeyman, the big fake bad guy that we need to interact with, to sort of exorcise our fears and have a bad guy to punish. He's a scapegoat. And from the very beginning, I've been saying that he's there to make Hillary Clinton look good. And up until today, both of them have been playing their parts perfectly. Called it. Pardon my language again, but Trump's clusterfuck of fail. Called it from day one. He's been trying to lose all along. He's been trying to look viable to everybody who supports him and anybody way over there in the extreme right. But even amongst, mainstream Republicans, he's just obviously digging a hole and making it harder and harder to elect him. Because, as we see now, all this speculation for weeks and weeks about the great pivot, which turned into the great softening, which today rebounded with the great softening again and then hardening of his immigration stuff. It's because he's trying to look viable only to the thin sliver of people that he's been sort of instructed, perhaps, or that he chose to really try to rally and to try to whip into a frenzy. Gee, I wonder why they would want to whip into a frenzy, a small fringe of predisposed to hatred and violent types. Who knows, right? Let's go on. Perfectly. Donald Trump has been, pardon my language, a clusterfuck of fail since day one. The only people that love him are the people that are crazy enough to love him already. No offense. For the record, I believe that everybody, including myself, and including you guys watching, everybody is a little bit crazy. And it's not a competition. And those people are generally sort of not super engaged voters who are familiar with him from reality television. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's perfectly fine to want to elect your favorite TV celebrity to the office of, the president. For those of you who don't remember, it's been done before. Hello, Ronnie Reagan. Okay? So they were fans that suddenly became politicized, which is why all the hubbub of civil war in the political organization known as the Grand Old Party, because it was really dramatically changing demographic. Sorry, in reviewing the tape, I realized that I wasn't very clear in that moment. What I meant to say was that during that transition, as Donald Trump ascended to power, the political party's demographics were rapidly changing because of the influx of voters that he was pulling in with him. As he became the party's nominee. And, well, today's events just have really totally shocked me. And yet, maybe not so much. I guess the shock was just that he was gonna do it. When I heard the breaking news that he was going to fly to Mexico to have a meeting with President Peña Nieto, I dropped everything. I had a whole plan for my day yesterday, and it's now, the next day as you're watching this. So I dropped everything to watch the live coverage, because they did. They were all over it. They covered empty podiums for part of the day in the sort of hyper anticipation. There they were, the empty podiums, waiting for the speeches to be given, and it was amazing. He really did go down there, as crazy as it seems. My first question, which was eventually discussed on other media outlets, but it was my very first question was, does Donald Trump even know how unpopular Mexico's president is? Because he's not doing so hot down there. As a Mexican, I can do a Mexican accent, because it's mine. I know I don't look it, but I was born in Mexico. I am here legally, just in case any viewers are sort of like weirded out. I'm an American-loving, permanent legal resident, and I have my rights and following the law. And that's not amnesty, because I paid my dues and I came here legally, just to get that out of the way. But Peña Nieto has got, from what I recall, the last I checked, a 22% approval rating. Okay? 22%. Mexico's a pretty decently sized country, and it's pretty huge population. And he's got a 22% approval rating. I don't remember Trump's numbers right this second, but they weren't doing so hot last I checked. And the trends were that both Clinton and Trump were in downward decline, despite what both of them were saying from either of their respective podiums. So that's just amazing. Before this moment, I truly thought that he was sort of like a blunderbuss, just sort of a nincompoop that just did, play along because he knew it would benefit him. But I didn't think he really had, the tactical capacity to truly become a real politician. Now, I get it. Anybody who supports Trump that might be watching this is going to parrot right there at that moment. Well, Trump isn't a politician. He's the exact opposite. No, he's not. And I realize now, I see a higher level of depth and complexity to Trump that I allowed myself to recognize before. And I will humble myself to you, audience. I will always stand corrected when, the truth can be presented to me. And Trump is savvier, and I never thought he was stupid. Okay? I never called the man stupid. But he's savvier than I ever gave him credit for. He went down there to my home country and played my home country's media like a lark by being the most polite and internationally savvy version of himself ever seen on television. And he sort of very quietly alpha mailed our Mexican president, I feel more American than Mexican. I love this country. But he really sort of outmaneuvered Peña Nieto really cleverly right at the end of the meeting. The meeting, if those of you don't know, according to reporting from various sources, was set up. Was to be a joint speech with no questions, and at the end, the press being what the press is, people started asking questions, and Trump, without warning, without apology, took one and answered it exactly the way you'd expect Trump to answer it. Because let's take a moment to really not forget the context here. Trump's appeal is to bullies because he's the top dog bully. And who has he been bullying? Who has he been bullying the most and the hardest since day one? Mexico. And its never-ending onslaught of rapists and drug addicts that flow north through the porous, almost non-existent border. Never mind the fact that net immigration, for those of you who don't know, net immigration in the last 3 to 5 years has been reduced to nearly zero, and in some peer windows of time has actually been negative gain. We've lost people. Some of my people have been going home. Okay? Because the rhetoric on the extreme sides of both sides is really anti-Latino, and that's really annoying. Trump was just incredibly agile in his quadruple flip-flopping, because in one day he gave a speech where he rode his bully, line and mentality of, I'm gonna go bully the Mexicans. Flew down to Mexico, was meek and quiet, although he did trump Peña Nieto with his little, I'm gonna answer your question, mate. I kind of lose track there for a second, so I thought I'd come in and clean up here. They both flip-flopped really intensely. Peña Nieto had been, to the best of my understanding, speaking pretty adamantly that he would not allow Trump to bully him. At the speech, at the not the presentation, what do you call it, the press conference, Peña Nieto stuck to his script, and then, as originally laid out, refused to take any questions and was just gonna leave. And when Trump kind of hijacked the moment, he made no commentary and was really stoic. He was playing his cards. He kept his cards really close to the vest, because you could read no reaction from him about Trump's strange commentary on the wall, and that they didn't get around to talking about it in terms of who was going to pay, that they touched on the wall. Both politicians clearly didn't really want to get into the details of the nitty-gritty of acknowledging that Trump did not show up and browbeat Peña Nieto into agreeing to anything. I think it was within 45 minutes or less after the meeting, after the press conference was over, because the meeting itself was very long, longer than anticipated, and thus the press conference was stuck there watching these empty podiums for quite a bit. But after the press conference was over, Peña Nieto took to Twitter to reassure the nation of Mexico that he had been strong in rejecting Trump's suggestion that Mexico would pay for a massive wall. And Trump flew back to Arizona. And let's stop and think about that for a second. After all the shade, all the heat that he's thrown Mexico, he just gets up and flies like a supremely entitled rich man, just picks up and goes in less than 42 hours notice, apparently. Doesn't worry about customs, just flies right in, takes a meeting with the president, snubs him sort of subtly, by breaking the sort of expected decorum of the exiting moment and taking a question of the topic that the two of them did not want to actually address in front of reporters right then. And then flies back to Arizona, a state which used to, a piece of land that used to belong to Mexico, and is 31%, maybe even as high as 33% Latino in terms of citizens who live there, residents who live there, people who vote there, and then proceed to resume to play hard. I mean, he had a great softening, hardening today. Because he really started out the day like talking tough, and then, kind of waffled, but he still got to be the alpha male, and then he came back and got to talk tough. The whole time I was watching his speech in Arizona, I was wondering, what the hand tally would be if you asked everybody to raise their hand who saw the joint, speech given by Trump and President Peña Nieto, and I bet very few of those people there had seen it. I expected more of a reaction from his fans, more of a reaction of disappointment. But no, they just jumped right in with all the chants that he wanted in the chant, and he spewed some vile, xenophobic, let's get rid of all of them rhetoric. And his answer in that moment was really interesting for anybody paying attention. Who's going to pay for the wall? Mexico is, right? When he gets there, he gets asked, did you guys talk about the wall? We talked about the wall, but we didn't talk about paying the payment. We're not going to talk about that yet. We didn't get around to that. But we talked about the wall. And Peña Nieto, nothing. Why? Because they were planning to do a joint statement, a written statement. There was a freaking translation prepared. Because if you noticed in the zoomed out shots, Trump was standing next to a cute little Mexican girl who was reading, because he didn't have an earpiece in. You ever watch, if you're a news wonk, if you're an international news wonk, you know that when dignitaries from different countries gather, there's almost always like a special room watching the event with a live microphone feed where translators are as quickly as possible translating for both news media and the people attending who may not be terribly clear on each other's languages. Okay? Trump was there. There was a woman reading next to him instead of the earpiece, but the same sort of thing. It was printed. That means that at some point or another, the statements, how long does it take to prepare a 25-minute speech? Unless you're going to ad lib extemporaneous the way I do sometimes on my shows here, then you just got, flashcards to flip through. But these guys they were reading. Peña Nieto was reading. Trump was reading. The lady translating Peña Nieto's documents to Trump, statements to Trump, was reading another document. So that's preparation. He didn't just fly in and chit chat and then, go make comments and leave. So let that sink in a minute. Anyways, Peña Nieto. I wish that as a Mexican I could have a lot more to tell you about the president in my home country, but I made this card earlier today. Peña Nieto. Don't know what to say other than he is terribly unpopular. And then research. I wrote down research, and I never got around to it. I promise for a future episode to do some research on Peña Nieto, because I'm really curious, by the way. I'll come back to this bit in a second. I'm really curious as to why Peña Nieto decided to take the political risk to invite Trump to our country, his country. This is my country too, right? I consider both. I'm a citizen of the world and an absent-minded professor guy, so forgive my rambling and constant intercutting. I'm just going to let it all out there. You either like it or you don't. So I'm really curious as to what the heck his motivation was, and I'm going to try to see what I can find about it in commentary elsewhere. So that's for a future episode, dear audience. But the timing couldn't have been any worse for Latino Americans or for Latinos in general, for Trump to go and do something risky like potentially embarrass himself or insult the president of Mexico. Latinos across the planet are in mourning for the loss of their most recent idol, the famous singer that passed away, whose name totally escapes me. Juan Gabriel, y que descanse en paz. May he rest in peace. Because that's another bit I forgot to look up. But hey, it's not news. This is an opinion show, not a news show. It's not my job to report the news. It's my job to give you my opinion about the news. But honestly, so like people are grieving, and they're grieving in that sort of big nationalistic, patriotic way because he was a celebrity, a superstar, and whether you liked his music or not, as listening to this now, it doesn't matter. There's cultural sensitivity to that sort of thing. Another interesting curiosity about this trip was that Trump, the people that were vying to get on that plane with Trump were all kinds of haters. MSN did a nice breakdown of that list. If you want to go look that up on MSN, they might have it on their website. If they don't, let me know and I'll try to find the clip for you because it's kind of funny. I tape recorded it. I record all the news just in case I want to bring it up and insert it here. But I'm still not sure about how that works with the legals. Anybody have an opinion on that? Whether or not I can insert, 15, 20 second, minute and a half long clips of news into my YouTube show so that then we can talk around it. Let me know if that's allowed. I've been too lazy to do the research to see who else is out there doing that kind of work on YouTube. I don't have time. Every minute of doing research, consuming someone else's product, forgive me, is time I can't make product for you guys to consume. So, zero press on the trip, and a bunch of crazy, potentially racist, most certainly xenophobic, keep everybody out type of people were wanting to get on the plane. It seemed like rush, and yet they had enough time to have all those prepared comments, which were actually pretty in-depth, pretty savvy about the state of America, pretty, politic. And by that I mean they were neutral. Peña Nieto and Trump did not bash each other, which is what I think most Trump fans wanted and expected. And didn't get. And that's my question about what we got to watch this space, as Rachel Maddow says. I hope that isn't a trademark term, but we got to watch this space, folks, because Trump fans are either I would expect Trump fans to be upset, confused, or at least mildly disappointed that Trump didn't just bash Peña Nieto verbally like some sort of what's his name, the puppets that beat each other up, not Jack and Jill, Punch and Judy. But as a theater major, I apologize. I'm rather embarrassed that in that moment I couldn't recall that really fundamental and simple theater history reference. Punch and Judy, hand puppets, very abusive. It's where we get the term slapstick comedy. I always want to say it with an SH, slapstick. I don't know where I got that mispronunciation from, but it's traditionally considered slapstick. That's a word that actually references a technical device, for those who didn't know. It was actually a paddle with two leaves, so it wasn't actually solid. It looked like a solid paddle that you'd whack someone on the butt with or something, that you spank kids with. But it actually had two thin wooden blades that would make an extra loud slap. So you could do a stage fight thing or a stage punch noise really easily. And they developed them, I think, originally, if I remember correctly, for the Punch and Judy shows, so that when the puppets would hit each other, it would make a more comic and, resounding noise. Back to what I was talking about. But you would have expected some sort of, you're going to pay for the wall and you're not going to get away with all your... No. He was very I consider you my friend, and it's very, we're great people here. All this lovey-dovey, and everybody's talking about some of the, acknowledging some of the problems. And I give them credit for this, and I don't know which side made sure that this happened. Because when it comes to the immigration discussion here in America, it's really easy most of the time, except for like the special exposés they do every once in a while, to just sweep it all under one rug of it's everybody coming from Mexico. When in truth, the vast majority of the people flowing north are coming from worse off countries further south. No offense, you guys. I love all people. I'm a citizen of the world. I'm not trying to say that one place is better than the other. And I don't even want to get started on my full opinion of immigration. Let's just say that if it came down to serious debate or discussion, if I had people here, I would side on the Native American side of like, oh, you guys don't like illegal immigration? So when is everybody who wasn't, here before Columbus going home? And that would make me look like someone that has to go home, right? Because I look really, really white and I sound really, really white. But like the old saying goes, never judge a book by its cover. So, the flip-flopping, man, the flip-flopping extraordinaire displayed both by Peña Nieto and Trump, that for that brief, what was it, 25 minutes? That speech, which if you haven't seen it, dig it up. I'm sure people have put it on the internet. I want to put it on the internet. I just don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get sued by a major company. I want to get picked up by a major company. Let's put it in context. Both of them had said some heated things after Trump's inaugural, opening salvo of offensive, thoughtless comments. Because let's get really real. And here's where it gets complicated, right? He goes there, he plays nice, he's very polite, but he kind of was a softening, does this man maneuver at the end. He comes back, he goes to Arizona, he speaks, and he's, boom, right back to, they're going to pay for it. And at the end, to make it really heartfelt and difficult to criticize, he really turns the whole thing on itself and sort of tries to co-opt the pain and suffering of everyone in America that's being shot and killed by someone else. But he brings up a host of people who are, family to victims of crime, of being killed, people who were killed by illegal immigrants. But what that creates is an artificial disconnect here. How many people in America are being killed by police officers who were white and were born in America? How many people in America are being shot by non-police officers who are also, Americans of whatever ethnicity, white, brown, green, purple, it doesn't matter. I understand that there's a lot to work through on the race issue, and I don't even want to take it to that place with this episode. I have hopes to do a whole race episode soon. But let's zoom back because we're talking about politics. He gets to Arizona and he uses this family. And my heart goes out to anybody who has lost. Okay? Period. Full stop. My heart goes out to everyone every day who gets brutally killed in some fashion or another. But to carve out this little divisive wedge and browbeat and insinuate this xenophobic hate over the tragedies that are specifically committed by illegal immigrants completely obfuscates and it's just an insult to everybody else. It obfuscates the problem, which is that people are killing other people, period. And it doesn't matter who is doing the killing and who is doing the dying. All right? And then he used that to tie it all together and make it hyper-nationalistic and hyper-patriotistic. Like, it's hyper-patriotism, hyper-nationalism leads to crazy things. I've always resisted because I do not appreciate how casually it can get thrown at someone. And I draw the line still today, journalistically. I'm not going to use the phrase. But what is I am implying it. You know, where do you go? Where has history shown us? Where does a nation get to when one man can speak for everyone, but everyone is sort of just this narrow wedge of people, and everybody else is the enemy, and we're gonna get them all gone. And he uses tragedy to sucker punch people in the gut and get them to fabricate consent. But this is where we got to transition now. I lingered on that whole thing way too much. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I've got a bunch of other more little mini articles I want to report on, but I think I'm going to leave this one at that for now, mostly for time and the fact that was just a whole bunch of stuff to say about Trump. But let me conclude with this. Just because I just spent a lot of time critiquing Trump does not mean that I am pro-Hillary. In case you didn't know that about me, I am not pro-Hillary. I'm not even pro-third party precisely. What I am is a little bit more complicated than that, which I will discuss and describe in a future episode. But I do believe that everyone needs to turn out and express their voice. I believe in voting. And I know that this confuses people. I've got a lot of friends on social media that are old school, abdicate the vote folks. I respect that position, and I think it's been a useful protest. But I think we've gotten to the point where the pool of people who are still voting is so small, they are way too easily controlled. And that's exemplified by today's lack of reaction, lack of disgust by Trump supporters. Sure, the erudite talking head intellectuals and myself are, jumping all over his mixed messaging, his flip-flopping, and his outright sort of like just offensive political use of Mexico and the victims of crimes here in America, of murder. And that's just outrageous. The fact that his core support group is just not fazed, nonplussed, and just nodding and screaming USA, USA, USA should worry everyone. And this has got nothing to do, obviously, everyone should be worried about what the government has been doing to us for the last 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, for the last 200 years, thousands of years. My theory reaches back to the Tower of Babel, but I digress. Anybody who's new, I'm not pro-Hillary Clinton. I respect womanhood. I am a feminist, and I want a female president. I just don't support her. And I don't know enough about Jill. I like the Green Party, though. But I'm beyond that. I'm sort of beyond that. I at this point, for this election and for the purposes of this show, as we approach the election of 2016, I'm here to promote a new social theory. Let's sort of crash the system. We haven't succeeded in crashing the system by abdicating the vote yet. And it seems like that might not ever happen, at least not before all kinds of other horrible things befall us. So why don't we try the opposite, because it's a little bit more fun and might garner a more instant reaction. Let's get up and vote absurdist style. Let's vote for Garfield. Let's vote for Ghostbusters. Let's vote for Penn and Teller. Let's vote for and for those of you who've known me long enough, I promoted the idea of voting for Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, because they seem like agreeable folk, although I guess not so much to those who have a whole beef against the entertainment industry, or, particular ethnic types. But you see my point. Vote for the Care Bears. What I'm driving at is, it doesn't matter who you vote for. What we want and what I'm promoting and what my election 2016 countdown show is all about is just not because we believe that the next president will solve the problems, but because if we all turned out, our voices would be heard and we'd crash the freaking system, yo. 100% turnout. Everybody, even if you're not supposed to vote, just show up. Show up and get to know your neighbors. Show up and use the public opportunity, the public platform for public discourse. Show up and use it to engage in civil, polite discourse about what's going on in our country. Show up and use it to exercise your American right to vote for anyone you want to, not just the lesser of two evils, even if it is Jimi Hendrix or the Beatles. Let's vote the Beatles into office. Although that would be maybe backfire on us, since the remaining Beatles may or may not be from another planet and or robots, according to some theorists out there. I think you get my point. I'll stop rambling about it for today, because we're going to come back to this point again and again, because I'm pretty sure it won't happen this time around. I should have started this video blog before the primary. It's too late now, because I've only got, X many fans, but hopefully this will catch on. Tell your friends. And for anybody who has questions, comments, suggestions, by all means, bring it. I'm an open book, and I will discuss with you anything you want to discuss in future episodes. Thanks for listening. I hope some of this was entertaining. I hope some of this was thought-provoking. And I'll be back with a little bit more real soon. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you. This has been the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Peace out, folks. Put that in the blooper reel. Okay, for reals, take 3. Hello, and namaste. I am the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, and this is... Which one am I doing? And this is... And this is politician time. No, that's horrible. I'm better at this than this. People are gonna love the blooper edition. It's just gonna be me fucking up. And I've barely gotten 4 episodes out, and it's probably already, more material of me screwing up than there is of me actually video blogging at you. Here we go. My experience in this country has been really weird. God bless it, like a fucking burping. Okay, that's an outtake that is getting done. Let's go back and try to nail this accent. Disculpa mi acento. And this is a country with a really long history of just taking the piss on the next group of people that want to come in. Rachel Maddow did a great little, recap of the intolerance in American politics today. And many other journalists throughout this election cycle have referenced the very strange, ironic fact that, all these pro-America people seem to either be willfully ignoring the founding fathers' intent and the sort of glorious melting pot dream that America is, or are painfully ignorant of it. A perfect example is, and one of my favorite things to throw in people's faces whenever they get a little frustrated with Yes, train, I hear you. Have you ever wondered, do you live near a train track crossing, and you ever wondered why in the middle, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning here, I'm trying to make this show, and the train going by makes more noise and has to honk more times than it does during the day at night when people are trying to sleep. And there are houses right up against the railroad. I'm lucky enough that I'm a couple blocks away. But look at it, it's still honking. That's one train. Well, that's definitely going in the blooper reel. Okay, back to this intercut thing. I'm really rambling about that stuff. I am proud to be Mexican, made in Mexico. And I'm proud to live in America and be part of this country and the great experiment in its society. And I am proud of the fact that I have family on both sides of the border. This is a great... That's a really loud coffee machine beep. And it cracks me up every time. Okay. I guess I'm not supposed to ramble anymore about that. Let's talk about